to include multiple actors in climate action, and how important is climate action that cannot be left to solely governmental processes. And especially since all the other stakeholders, NGOs, business organizations, academia, grassroots movements, all of them, scientists, they are the ones who are doing the job, doing the work on the ground. So, in this context, Traction, the Turkish Alliance for Climate Action and Beyond, brings together 10 civil society organizations and 20 business organizations to work for Turkey's European Union Green Deal alignment, i.e. Accelerating its climate action, and also with the aim of expanding science-based targets in Turkey. So, to get into, before going into our panel discussion, I would like to tell you a little bit about what Traction it is and what it does. If you allow me, I have a small presentation, and then we will go on with our panelists. But of course, before starting my presentation, I would like to present you who we are here with today, the members of Traction Platform. Banu Binbaşaran Tüysüzoğlu. She's from Yuvam Dünya, Earth is My Home Association in Turkey, which is one of the members of Traction. And also Ayşe Ceren Sarıoğlu from Sustainable Economics and Finance Association. And we have also two panelists online. Hazal İnce from Turkish Industry and Business Association, and Bahar Özay from Resource Environment and Climate Association in Turkey. So, going back to my initial question, what Traction is, I will now sharing my screen, if you can see it. Okay, perfect. So, Traction, the Turkish Alliance for Climate Action and Beyond. Why was it born? Why did we bring it? And what was the context? I would like to tell you a little bit about it. So, Turkey needs to set more ambitious climate targets. Although we know that its second NEC is slightly, little bit better, but we also know very well the fact that a business as usual target cannot take us to a net zero emissions by 2053, which is Turkey's final goal. And in addition to this, we also need more concrete elements in sectoral transformation roadmaps. And moreover, we also know that the EU alignment, specifically the European Green Deal, is a very important element that can actually be an anchor in this context. And moreover, we also know that with this ambiguity, it is going to be the businesses and also the communities who will be at risk. Therefore, we need to strengthen the dialogue between the civil society, businesses, and the policymakers to make them speak the same language. So in this context, science-based targets is a great methodology to granularize whose responsibility is what and whose fair share is what. So therefore, we found Traction to bring together businesses and CSOs to understand each other, to learn more about each other's experiences and also their expertise. That may be expertise on critical sectors, or that equally and more importantly, the expertise of civil society organizations who are working on nature conservation. So they can learn from each other. And in addition to this, we also found Traction to basically provide a platform where all these stakeholders come together and discuss on basically solid solution elements. So the Traction project is run by WWF Türkiye and Turkish Industry and Business Association, which represents a vast majority of businesses in Turkey. And also another partner is Global Compact Türkiye, which has been active since 2002 and now has more than 500 members in Turkey, mostly businesses in Turkey. And the project is funded by the European Union. So what is the element that brought together the Traction partners, members of Traction signed a declaration which specifies the common ground and vision, and that is to promote science-based targets and support Turkey's alignment with European Green Deal, as well as encourage capacity building and knowledge sharing, and contribute measurable, concrete and time-bound targets, and strengthen multi-stakeholder cooperation. So in this context, what do we do? In Traction, we organize technical trainings on technical elements of European Green Deal, i.e., for example, the CDDR directive, corporate due diligence directive, or the CBAM. In addition to this, obviously, how to set science-based targets, what they are. Not only science-based climate targets, we also know that science-based nature targets is coming, so we are also increasing knowledge. And in addition to this, we are also providing capacity increase on via professional workshops, which increase their ability to make the members of Traction to make them more impactful on the policy making context. And we provide a dialogue atmosphere via regular meetings with public institutions, and to raise awareness on science-based targets. And also we have outreach and visibility activities, such as what we are doing today, to promote Traction, its vision and its members, and also media outreach. So here you can see some visual elements from what we are doing. And in the future, what we aim to do is to expand the partnership, so to expand the membership of Traction to businesses, specifically to companies, and continue our capacity building elements on science-based targets, strengthen our dialogue with the policymakers, and scale up measurable solutions. So here you can see the members of Traction platform, and this was what Traction was about. So having said this, now I would like to turn to our panelists. Let's start with Banu. So Banu, could you please tell us what are the main barriers and opportunities for advancing climate action in Turkey, and how can European Green Deal alignment process, and science-based targets serve as enablers in this context. Thank you.
Hi again. I like to start with a little introduction about myself and what we study in my role to actually highlight the concerns we doesn't work. Okay. Do you hear me now? Okay, good. And at the same time, this uncertainty also fuels greenwashing. So some companies, consciously or not, communicate sustainability without truly embedding it in their operations, and this erodes the credibility of sustainability as well, and turning what should be hopeful narrative for us into public skepticism. In short, instead of accelerating the change, okay, it slows it down. And if there is a positive shift in the society, we are more aware about greenwashing as people in a society. But this also puts a pressure on the companies because people started to call out when they see a greenwashing, and this creates a fear of being labeled by the companies. So there are also, of course, opportunities, and that we are more aware, and civil society organizations that focusing on climate action are multiplying, and also capacity of building, capacity of knowledge production, and dialogue between academia, the private sector, and civil society is strengthening. And the EU Green Deal, especially the carbon border adjustment mechanisms, have played a key role waking up the companies about the issue. And the science-based targets, both for climate and nature, provides companies with a clear roadmap. I think these are the good opportunities, and they shift the question for the companies, especially from what to how. How do we actually become sustainable as the Earth has been doing for 3.8 billion years? So I think this is my.
Thank you very much, Banu. From what you said, I've got three takeaways. Two takeaways. One is definitely the European Green Deal was a wake-up sign in Turkey to strengthen and accelerate climate action, especially on the side of businesses. And for a critical risk and for critical element, science-based targets play a very important role to avoid green washing via providing a universally accepted methodology. So I would like to now turn to Bahar with the same question, if Bahar, you can hear us. So, Bahar, could you please also tell us what are the main barriers and opportunities investing climate action in Turkey, and how can EU Green Deal and science-based targets can be an enabler in this context? So, the floor is yours, Bahar.
and access to affordable green finance remains limited. As a result, many companies still perceive climate action as a financial burden rather than an investment opportunity. While awareness of the risks of the climate uh, cause, limited resources, and market volatility often delay concrete action. So in Turkey, the challenges is not a lack of knowledge, but it's a lack of implementation. Climate targets and development plans are still treated as separate agendas, and we had an earthquake in 2023. Even after this post-earthquake reconstruction or new industrial investments, climate criteria are rarely integrated. Yet these very challenges, energy dependence, urban resilience, and economic recovery could be powerful drivers of transformation. So, at Turkey, REC Turkey, we believe that climate policy is a development choice. We work hard to inform and convince our partners to pursue smart, resilient, and low carbon transformation paths. For this reason, Traction is a very good example of alliance building for stronger climate action with science-based targets. Thank you.
Very much, Bahar. Thank you very much, Bahar, especially for your strict timing on your speech. And well, from you, I've got important takeaways. One was you've noted that the energy transformation that is very critical in Turkey because in Turkey's energy production, uh, well, more than 55% of our electricity come from fossils, and a third of our electricity come from coal. So therefore, in that case, the one of the most critical element is the transformation of the energy sector, especially phasing out coal and the on the way to net zero emissions. And you've also mentioned about centralizing climate action. That is also very critical on all policy areas. Now, I would like to turn to our another distinguished panelist, Ayşe. Could you please also elaborate a bit on the same question? Ayşe is from Sefia, and we work very closely together on multiple projects, so it's very, very good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Daniele. It's a big pleasure for me to be here as well, and thank you very much for the invitation and all the panelists as well. As Daniel mentioned, I'm Ayşe. I work at Sustainable Energy and Finance Association in Turkey as research director. The short name is Sefia, so I'm going to use this one henceforward. So Sefia is a leading think tank in Turkey that works on energy transition, just transition, climate crisis, sustainable development topics like all the framework, I think, from the lens of economics and finance. So we try to focus on more on policy, economics, finance, and today too I would like to bring a perspective on the more like policy perspective, policy governance and finance perspective maybe. And to come to the question, as Sanyeli and the panelists already mentioned, in recent years climate action has moved to a more central role in Turkey from before, compared to before, in Turkey's political and economic agenda. However, this visibility does not transform, like automatically transform into consistent and tangible transformation, to be honest. So at Sefia, what we do is that we analyze this landscape holistically across three axes mainly. These are finance, governance, and policy coherence. And we see that with respect to the question of like what are the main barriers and opportunities for Turkey's climate action, we see five main barriers, which I'm going to be very shortly touch upon. The first one is the coherence of targets. We have mentioned we have net zero targets for 2053. This is a strong political statement, yes, but it still lacks a concrete roadmap. Turkey already also announced its new NDC at New York in September. But this NDC, it made the picture actually more complex than before, because the new NDC still projects a limitation of growth of emissions. It does not offer an absolute reduction of emissions. Also, the sectoral transition pathways are not defined, especially in energy, industry, agriculture, and transport. And there's a structural misalignment with the net zero visions of like 2053. So we at CEFIAT see this as a technical gap, yes, but it's also a matter of financial credibility. The credibility of targets strengthens only to the extent that they send a clear signal to the investors and society as a whole that the transition is planned, it's going forward. Currently, this signal is very weak in Turkey. The second point is the coal phase-out planning and the just transition issue. As we already mentioned, roughly 1/4 of Turkey's electricity still comes from coal. There's no official exit year, no coal exit roadmap, no regional timeline, nor a transition plan, let alone just transition at all. So this is not merely an environmental gap, but a social and economic one as well. So just transition, as you know, it has three main pillars, like social, technical, and economic. Like regional development, it's a regional development issue as well. So achieving it requires a clear public commitment to setting targets and plans, like regional plans, so that all actors can align their efforts all together. Like otherwise, an unplanned transition imposes a far higher cost on everyone, all the stakeholders. So without new development and employment opportunities, infrastructure transformation, social protection measures on core regions, a just transition is just impossible. So as Tanya mentioned, we are working very closely. We have a forthcoming report coming at the end of December on financing just transition in Turkey. And our studies clearly illustrated this point as well. Like in coal-dependent regions like Soma, Zonguldak, the absence of such planning would create not only environmental but also very high social and developmental costs. Yes. The third point is about climate law. Turkey has published its climate law. Okay, it's an important milestone for Turkey, but it focuses almost solely on ETS. We say, okay, ETS is necessary, but it's not sufficient at all. So the success of the law will depend on establishing a functioning system that incentivizes mitigation and generates revenue. And secondly, the strength those revenues are linked to just transition policies. As we mentioned, a mechanism that channels revenues into just transition, only like that, it ensures the system serves this like public interests. The fourth point is about climate finance architecture. Climate finance in Turkey is fragmented and it's largely project-based. Public funds are limited, private sector investments are in their early stages, and international funding mostly comes through isolated projects. Finance is a source of funding, yes, but also it's an instrument of prioritization. It determines which sectors will transform, which regions are going to transform, and what topics are going to be prioritized. And the last point is about the governance and social ownership. Climate policy in Turkey is still largely shaped by central institutions. And all our studies, I think from all the stakeholders from Turkey show that when civil society, academia, trade unions, local governments are not meaningfully involved in this like policy making processes, the legitimacy of the decisions they weaken. Just transition is first the social, and then regional development based, and then it's technical. Thus, participatory governance is essential. For this reason, we propose models just as just transition communities, commissions, social partners committees, and local just transition platforms. And finally, to very shortly talk about EU Green Deal and science-based targets, EU regulations serve both as a driver and an external pressure point for Turkey. CBAM has accelerated the ETS preparations, the sustainability reporting and science-based targets have raised awareness and action within the private sector. However, the process remains in Turkey as largely reactive. we react to these policies. And once Turkey defines its own strategy and directs its own finance, like from public budget accordingly, then it can evolve from a reactive adapter to a proactive agenda setter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Um, Thank you very much, Ayşe. Well, woof, it is very hard to. It will be very hard to summarize what you said, so I'll not go into that. But I think it was all very to the point, and it was very clear, especially the part about finance. I would like to now turn to Hazal to hear a bit about the business perspective. So, Hazal, could you please also give us the picture from the lens of TÜSİAD?
Thank you, Tanyeli, and hello all. First of all, it's a pleasure to be part of this panel. Although I cannot be there in person this year, it's an honor to join you, even online, and thank you again for the invitation. Regarding your question, some points will be repetition probably, but I would like to bring more of a private sector perspective as a representative of TÜSİAD, which is the largest voluntary business association in Turkey. And when we look at Turkey's climate action landscape, I'd like to start with the opportunities to give a more hopeful picture, let's say. And first, the readiness of the private sector in Turkey is remarkably high. We see strong awareness and commitment across industries in Turkey, and many TÜSİAD member companies already have comprehensive sustainability strategies, and the number of companies setting science-based targets continues to grow. And this clearly shows that the private sector is both ready and willing to act for the climate action. And also, the growing regulatory alignment with the European Union provides a clear framework for climate action in Turkey. The EU Green Deal, along with the CBAM and CSRD and other related relevant directives and regulations, are powerful external drivers of transformation, not only in the European Union but also in Turkey as well. And Turkey's own sustainability reporting standards and the upcoming national ETS are important steps in this alignment. Climate change action plan and the climate law in Turkey will hopefully further strengthen this policy framework. But of course, they are not isolated from some barriers. There are still some important challenges and areas for improvement to address. And the first issue is related to the alignment between climate targets and policy implementation. Turkey's NDC targets need to be clear and ambitious enough to ensure the 2053 net zero goal is achievable. So sectoral roadmaps as well as financial mechanisms are also very important to make this transition feasible and credible. And secondly, we need stronger implementation mechanisms. Many policy frameworks are already in place, but the design and the use of revenues, for example, generated from green transformation, will be critical for accelerating progress. And last but not the least, we must improve coordination and collaboration among different actors and policies, adopting a truly holistic approach. At times, unfortunately, the coordination is lacking. However, there are also some promising examples as well. For instance, the working groups established under the Green Deal Action Plan in Turkey is one of the examples, and these working groups bring together the government, business, and civil society together. And this shows how inclusive policymaking can drive a faster and more balanced transition. And looking all these pictures, it's also very consistent with the global reports or some data as well. The recently published Bloomberg report, for example, paints a similar picture. Turkey ranks 17th among 25 countries and demonstrates a real progress in risk assessment and resilience planning, while also there are areas for improvement, particularly in early warning systems and climate insurance coverage. So we can say that three elements are essential for effective climate policy. The first is predictability, the second is coordination, and the third is transparency. And to sum up the whole question, we can say that Turkey has a strong private sector base and a policy environment increasingly aligned with the European Union and globally. And the next step is to translate intentions into measurable, science-based actions. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Ozal. And yeah, before turning to the other panelists for the second round, I would like to start with you again, Hazal. So you've mentioned about the barriers and opportunities. Could you also tell us a bit about the main needs of the private sector in this context? Maybe like three critical elements, and then how traction can help address them.
Um, as I said in my answer to the previous question, from the private sector's point of view, the motivation to act on climate is already there. So, what companies or the private sector now needs are clarity, support, and capacity to scale up their actions. And when we look at the key needs of the private sector, first, as I said before, there is predictability and clear roadmaps. Companies need long-term sector-specific pathways aligned with the net zero target of the country, and a clear complementary policy framework will provide predictability for action and enable effective planning and investment eventually. And the second is already mentioned incentives and fiscal financial mechanisms. The tax and incentive system should encourage and reward green investments, and the programs that support green transformation investments, particularly in energy intensive sectors, should be strengthened. Third is finance, very related to the second point, because when we look, the scale of the need for investment is very remarkable and significant. A study by EBRD and the Turkish Ministry of Industry and Technology estimate around $70 billion will be required over the next 30 years for the green transformation of steel, aluminium, and cement sectors alone. So to meet this need, international financial institutions will play a critical role. And the fourth is capacity building, and especially for the SMEs, which constitute the largest part of the Turkish private sector and industry. And many SMEs need stronger technical knowledge and data capabilities to comply with the EU standards. And thinking that the reporting and due diligence are on the way from the EU side, our SMEs, which are really very integrated to the European Union supply chains, will be required to comply with all these standards. And capacity building should also focus on supply chain transformation, as large climate commitments increasingly depend on the performance of their suppliers, generally SMEs. And we believe that this is exactly where traction provides value, because traction is a multi-stakeholder initiative, and it's unique in bringing together business and green CSOs in Turkey together, and is designed to strengthen corporate strategies on climate and nature. So it promotes the adoption of science-based targets methodologies and helps all the stakeholders to set credible and internationally recognized goals. And it also builds technical capacity through targeted workshops based on the necessities of CSOs, which you already mentioned. But I would like to also point out some of them because they are really very important. They came from the feedbacks of the stakeholders of Traction. So we organize all these workshops based on the necessities of the CSOs, which are part of Traction. And these are, for example, the risk analysis and target setting, investor expectations and transparency, and supply chain transformation. So by connecting businesses, civil society, and experts, Traction helps move from awareness to measurable progress, providing the data, structure, and most importantly, collaboration that all stakeholders need for effective implementation. At TCIAT, we see Traction as a concrete example of how collective initiatives can empower the private sector and strengthen Turkey's overall climate action capacity. And again, as TÜSİAD, we are proud to be part of this valuable initiative along with WWF Türkiye and UN Global Compact Türkiye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hazal. I would like to now I would like to now turn to our panelists here. for the second round. Let's start with Ayşe. Ayşe, could you also please tell us about how do you see the role of multi-stakeholder alliances like Traction in accelerating the climate action in Turkey, and what benefits has your organization gained by being part of Traction?
Of course, thank you, Tanyeli. So, the multi-stakeholders initiatives like Traction are among the most valuable efforts, like redefining the climate action in Turkey. So, as we know, like from the scope as well, like since 2 days, like the climate action now extends far beyond the boundaries of any single institution or sector. So, it requires coordination, it requires trust, it requires shared learning. So at Sefia, for these reasons, we view Traction not just as a network, but also as a learning atmosphere from each other. Like the diversity of this program enables something that's often missing in Turkey. Different languages actually hearing, actually listening to each other. So there are a few spaces in Turkey where an energy modeling organization can directly interact with an NGO working on nature-based solutions, for example, or where a financial risk institution can engage with a social impact association. So Traction creates that space, and what amplifies impact is precisely this shared ground in Turkey. To accelerate climate action, we need not only more finance, but also more coordination, information exchange, and a common vision. We believe Traction has strengthened dialogue capacities, particularly with the public sector. Policy processes in Turkey typically fall from top to down, and Traction reverses this dynamic. It carries insight, analyzes, and experiences from the bottom up. This enhances both the technical accuracy and the legitimacy of dialogues within decision makers. And from our perspective at Sefia, like we directly have three benefits that I can talk about. The first one is about capacity building. Through knowledge sharing and joint workshops on technical aspects such as EU Green Deal, emissions trading systems, SBTI, SBTN, both our organization and partners deepened their understanding, and this enabled us to develop clearer policy recommendations on many levels, like for different target groups. The second one is about building trust between civil society and public institutions, which we don't have so much, and also with private sector. So in Turkey, like the communication with public and private institutions are very limited, and civil society is generally excluded from this limited interaction. And Traction has kind of changed that dynamic. Now in the same session, we have industrial companies like trade unions, research organizations, NGOs that can clearly come together at an oval table and communicate through policy making, policy coherence, all the topics that we are talking about actually. Before this was not like really possible. And the third point is developing a shared perspective on climate finance and policy coherence again. It's we see Traction as a kind of a policy laboratory, I think can be the right terminology. So as we already talked about, Turkey faces a complex agenda in terms of like ETS design, just transition planning, national finance mechanisms, coal exit timelines. And the joint analyses within Traction network have shown that these agendas can be addressed in an integrated way. Just before COP, we were talking about, again, like all together, at the meeting that actually we should integrate like the industrial policies, like climate policies, and development agenda, like this should all come together under the umbrella of like just transition maybe. So we should really create this policy coherence now and altogether strengthen the bindings of all these different policies that are not actually different but telling about the same things. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ayşe. So, for the last intervention, let's go back to Banu. Banu, could you also please elaborate on the same question from your perspective?
Okay, thank you, Tanyeli. Actually, I agree with all the points that Aisha already mentioned, and we all know climate action is far beyond the capacity of just one organization can handle, one single institute can handle. So no one, neither governments, nor business, nor civil societies can tackle this crisis alone. So we have to be together, and these sort of platforms like Traction, this is why they're so valuable. Actually, they bring us together. We not only share information, we learn a lot from the Traction itself, but also we also build collective intelligence, and we also we build a shared responsibility. So we think together, we start acting together. So we actually found the courage to act together. So this is, I think, very important. And as a Yuvam Dünya, we believe it is essential to bring together different disciplines, as other panelists also mentioned, Aisha, Aisha mentioned, and so we care about bringing finance, energy, education, health, and academia. We bring all these disciplines around the same table, and I think Traction, the real value of the Traction lies in creating space where all these different sectors, different perspectives, and different approaches, we can all work side by side. I think this is the thing I can add to Aisha's points.
Thank you very much, Banu. I think that so that brings us to the final elements, the final takeaways. I think, as you've said, building trust is very critical, especially in an atmosphere that where we have such a big issue to deal with, where we need everyone on board. But also, on the other hand, specifically in the case of Turkey, where we have an ambiguity of policies and gaps to be filled in. But on the other hand, as an advantage, where we have the dynamism of the private sector, especially um, uh, with the dynamism that the European Green Deal alignment process created in Turkey. And here, in this context, the science-based targets play a very critical goal to feed in there. And via learning from one another, we hope that Traction is going to keep this dynamism alive in Turkey. So thank you very much all for joining us today. So let's now, before closing, turn to our distinguished participants, and here, if you have any comments or questions to add. Okay, I hear no questions, no objections, so it is decided. Thank you very much all for being with us today.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. I'm from SBTI. You were talking about SBTI, so nice meeting you. Merhaba. Merhaba. Yeah. I am Mila. Yeah. I work with Kim.
Yeah, you work with Kim and we met online, right?
Exactly.